Okay, so this is called Live Rite Tonight. Why don't you start by giving a little bit of your backstory, if you'd like? You are my special guest, Jessie Strong.
Mm, Okay. Well, backstory is basically I lost my son Gary to fentanyl poisoning slash overdose October 24th of 2017.
Okay.
Um, it was a rough go trying to fight, for his life. Obviously, a lot of confrontation. He had overdosed once, was brought back by uh, Narcan. Uh, and got back into it. He actually started off with prescription medications,
Right,
Norco.
which a lot of us, are addicted to opiates. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of people have started.
Right. Yeah. He hurt his back working out at the gym. Didn't
Okay.
have a spotter, barbell fell on his back.
Ouch.
Um, yeah. And then sadly, it did turn to heroin.
Yeah.
One thing that hits me hard is I did get a copy of his medical chart after he passed away. Several times he would go back in the doctors and ask for more Norcos, which was recorded in his chart. The doctor asked him every time, why are you out of medication so quick? His answer every single time was it was stolen. This was written 6 or 7 times. And
So
she
again,
wrote in the chart that it was not a red flag for addiction, which really, really bothers me. But he did go into rehab after, well, one day I had found him in the bathroom, slumped over the sink.
Okay.
Syringe in hand. I knew what was in the syringe. I knew it was heroin.
Right.
But I asked him anyways, what is in your syringe? He said, Mom, it's rat poison. I just want to die. I've disappointed everybody. I told him, I don't care what, if you hate me, you can hate me, but I'm calling the police right now. I'd rather have you in jail than have you dead.
Absolutely.
So police came, he had the syringe on him. So he went to jail for 2.5 months. And from that went into rehab.
Okay.
Okay. After rehab, he was doing fantastic. He was clean for 18 months. Sorry for getting emotional.
You're okay. You're okay. I appreciate you sharing your story.
I still lose it.
Yeah, that's your son. That's okay.
Yeah. He was doing so well. I let him move back home. He was working 2 jobs as a cook. I thought I really had my son back. He would barge in my room in the middle of the night and tell me things that he went through. He would tell me things that Mom never wants to hear, but he needed to tell me and I needed to hear it for sure.
Do you think him telling you these things was like his way of reaching out to you to try and get extra help, knowing he was struggling like that?
Yeah, I do. There's a million what ifs and if onlys in my head, and they will always be there. And there's even times when he didn't have a ride from work and I'd pick him up from work because I was working right down the road, and there was times he wasn't good with small conversation, and I didn't even realize that was a sign at that time.
Right.
I have medical training, but when it's your child, it goes all out the window.
Understandable.
But we got close and I thought I had my son back. And then one day on his day off, which was a Tuesday, he was up that day as I was leaving for work at 6:30, which I thought was odd, but he just looked at me as I walked out the door and said, Mom, I love you. Have a good day. I said the same thing back to him. Those were our last words. I worked a double that day. Came home at 10:30 at night. All the lights were on. I knew something was wrong though, because when I got about halfway home, I had a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Because actually I had been trying to get a hold of him all day. A friend of ours did. couldn't get a hold of him. He was not responding.
And that's definitely a red flag.
Yeah. Deadbolt was on the front door, which never is because it didn't work right. All the lights were on downstairs. His bedroom and my bedroom were downstairs. I called for him. I'll never forget the echoing of my voice calling through the house, Gary, Gary, where are you? Are you okay? I didn't see him anywhere. So I decided to go ahead and sit on the couch, and something told me you can't go on, sit on a couch, you need to go upstairs. And I thought, well, why would I go upstairs? He never goes up there. It's just one big room, pool table up there.
Right.
But I knew I needed to go. I got about halfway up the stairs, and I felt like I was walking through a dark, negative wall. I got up there, and I turned the corner, and I saw his foot, and he was in the corner in the fetal position. All I could do was fall on him. He had been there a while because he was cold and stiff, and he was already decomposing.
So sorry.
And of course, I don't know why, but I tried to live in that house after he died because I felt like if I left the house, I was leaving him, which isn't true. But
Right.
that's the way I felt. For a long time, for the first, I would say 4 or 5 months, I would just stay in my room. All the blinds were drawn. I wouldn't answer the phone to family or friends. I have to be totally honest. I was suicidal during that time.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Grief is a very powerful thing. And, feeling that way definitely, I'm sure a lot of other people in that situation have felt that low as well.
Yes.
So,
what brought me out of that, one day I was getting up for work and I stepped on a piece of paper and it was right next to my bed, right where I face, next to my nightstand. And it was one of Gary's letters that he had written me when he was in rehab.
wow.
And it's a letter I thought I lost. It was a very short note, but it has a lot of meaning. He wrote in that note, Mom, I need you to know that I appreciate everything you do. I don't think you know how much I love you, but I really, truly love you. You have stood behind me like a beacon of hope and understanding when everybody else has left me. And he said, I know this is corny, but hey, let's face it, you're corny too. And then he signed it, your biggest fan, Gary.
Aww.
So obviously I still have that note.
Right.
But that's what made me realize, you know what, I can't just sit here and not do anything. I have to be his voice, and I have to save another mom from feeling my pain. So that's why I decided to start a group called Dragon Slayers. And the reason it's called Dragon Slayers is there was at a time during the struggle, he looked at me and said, Mom, I need to slay the dragon. Back then, I didn't know that the dragon meant heroin until he explained it to me. So that's where that comes from. Also, after his death, when I finally got the nerve to clean out his room, is when I found his journal, which I did not realize he was keeping a journal of his struggle. As I told you earlier, he told me a lot of things that I didn't want to hear, but there were some things that he kept to himself.
Right.
Which I didn't know it, and I feel horrible about it and not knowing. But he wrote in his journal from ages 8 to 10, he was sexually molested by his stepfather. So,
I know, finding that out after the fact, I know that had to have impacted you a lot. Were you going back through, the journal? We can talk a little bit more about, you publishing that and all that. Did you feel like at the time reading that was something that was helping you along, or how did you feel going?
Um, I don't, at the time, I felt worse because
Yeah,
I always questioned, why didn't I know all of this stuff? You know, why didn't I talk to him more? Why didn't I ask more questions? And when he was that age, why didn't I see any signs?
right. But it's definitely not your fault. So
Right. And
I
there was a
know
lot of, yeah, there's a lot of things in that journal that I did not know. And that's why
kind
I
of brought
decided,
some
you know
things to
what,
light, right?
it needed to be shared. And of
Mhm.
course, there was that in the beginning. How do I tell everybody when, because everybody's going to ask, how did he die?
Right.
You know, but I said, you know what, this is not, I can't just be quiet about it. And there
No,
are some families that do sweep it under the rug and won't
absolutely.
tell. Um, but there's no, I just had to let everybody know, and this whole world should know, an addict is not just an addict.
Right.
Somebody's
Absolutely.
child, somebody's loved one, they are somebody special.
Hmm. I feel like, me being in recovery myself, obviously, people finding out, that you're an addict, there is a ton of stigma that goes along with that. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that, you being the mother of an addict and realizing, like, hey, my son was somebody. He was my son. I loved him. He wasn't just an addict. Because,
Right, there's so much more.
right, right. Um, Now, with finding the journal, what was your thought process on getting the word out and maybe getting that published like you did?
um Well, I thought if I decided to share his journal, I should also share my story as the mom, the fight to try to save his life, and then the pain of losing him, along with some educational stuff on what addiction is and what
Absolutely.
happens to the brain, and you know the chemicals within the brain are changed. Um,
Absolutely.
so and I decided to name it Gary's goal because he had a goal to recover,
Yes.
you know. And okay, so he's not here, but he's still, I know he's still fighting for everybody else. And he's at my side to fight for everybody else. So Gary's goal now is to help heal everybody else. Has become that. I wanted to get it published, and I had talked to a friend that did a book on alcoholism, and he
Okay.
told me about Create Space Publishing, which
Okay.
has been actually bought out by Kindle and Amazon,
Okay.
but that's how it was published.
Now, having it being published and noticing that more people were getting the message that you were trying to present, was it making like the grief process a little easier for you, knowing that you were using this for the greater good? Did it make it any easier, or how did that make you feel, knowing that other families that could be going through this are now having a little more understanding on, like you had mentioned, what these chemicals actually do to your brain and how, the addicted brain does change? Because a lot of people are unaware of that. They think that, being an addict is a choice when sometimes it's not. A lot of addicts, especially opiate addicts, continue to use to avoid withdrawal. It's not just something you wake up and choose to be. Now, what about the the outreach you've done for the community now? I know, personally, I've seen you at a few local community events, and, you know, does going to these events and kind of raising awareness for you, does that, what's the word I'm looking for, I guess, help you in a way now?
It does. It really does. And it's still, as I said earlier, it's still very hard to share my story.
Yes.
And I think it always will be. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people say time heals all wounds. No, it doesn't. You just learn how to cope with it.
Yes.
But yes, because I feel it actually heals me to go out and to do things, you know, with different facilities. Yes. And I'll even sometimes just pop up at a craft show because it's everywhere.
Absolutely.
We know addiction is everywhere, you know, and talk to people. Also do animal therapy. We have a small farm in Fort Gratiot, Country Critter Farm. And our animals have gone out to high school. We have a miniature goat, Juliet. She's gone out to a high school before, you know, to talk to kids. They do animal therapy.
That's awesome.
We've had some opioid awareness events right here at the farm. So it does help a lot. It helps me heal.
And just the fact of you know, sharing your story and what you've gone through and the way that you've been coping with the grief, I feel as though people hearing that story coming from you, being the mother, you know, of an addict and trying to raise the awareness, you know, like you said, with Gary fighting there, right there with you, hearing it from another perspective, such as yours, I feel people are more apt to listen to you, you know, versus, you know, sometimes when an addict shares their story, you know, they still have that stigma. But hearing it from you, you know, I feel like a lot of people can relate because there are, you know, so many deaths caused by overdose now because it is so prevalent that, I know that it's affected a lot more families and people than we talk about, you know. Now, as far as, you know, when people ask you, is there a way, let me put it this way, is there a way that people can find the journal?
It is actually available on Amazon.
Okay.
It is also on the shelf at Discount Bible Store in on the corner in Warren.
Okay.
And Barnes and Noble have it online.
Okay. Just to kind of give our viewers an idea of where to find it, I know we have a copy of it and it's excellent. To see, you know, it's not only about just his struggle, but it does show, you know, he's more than that also, like you had said. So, but I do appreciate what you do in the community as far as raising the awareness, because I feel, especially now, you know, we need all the help we can get.
For sure.
Especially, like I said, I'm in recovery myself, and I know how hard it can be to have a voice, you know, when it comes to addiction and things. You know, not a lot of people are open to the idea of hearing what, you know, a recovering addict has to say or whatever, because of that stigma that follows that. And like I said, I think it's great what you do in the community, you know, raising that awareness and staying strong and sharing your story, even though it may be hard. You know, it does touch a lot of people. But yes, I do appreciate you taking the time to share your story. It's something that, you know, helps a lot of people in that situation that, you know, might be new to it, you know, new to having, you know, a family member in addiction. They don't really know how to handle it, and getting someone else's perspective that has been there, you know, is a lot easier to go through with things, you know, and cope, find different ways to cope in a healthy manner, you know.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And I also have a Facebook page for the farm and for Dragon Slayers.
I would love to see the farm animals. That's a great idea.
Yeah. I'm also a co-administrator of Michigan Team Sharing, Parents Who've Lost a Child to Substance Abuse Disorder.
That is awesome.
So if anybody has lost a child, we support each other. I mean, and it's not just
Yes,
online. We get together, we do awareness events, and things like that.
that is
But I
excellent.
just kind of like to say, if there's any parents listening,
Yes,
open your ears, open your heart. Um, I was never one of those parents that said, not my child can't get addicted. I knew
right.
there was a possibility, but I have to say, when he was, after in recovery, when he was clean those 18 months, I just said, he's not going to die. That was the sad thing. I said, no, not my son. He's not going to die. And here
Right.
he is. He's gone, you know. But no matter what, your kids or your family members, your loved one, and it's not just kids, it's parents,
Right.
it's grandparents, aunts, uncles,
It
siblings.
definitely
If they
does not
want to say something,
discriminate. Right.
listen, yes. And it doesn't matter, you're rich, poor, anything, or where you're from. It doesn't matter. But if somebody wants to say something to you, listen wholeheartedly and don't judge. We've all, done things in life. We've all been
Right.
through trauma. We know how bad trauma can be. I do believe our country doesn't have enough psychiatric issues, you know. Gary was on and off psychiatric medications, and he
Yes.
told me when he was going to therapy, when he was in recovery, the therapist made him feel worse.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I do feel as though, substance abuse and mental illness do kind of go hand in hand. A lot of people start by, self-medicating or, even in Gary's instance, him saying that a therapist makes him feel worse because there's still judgment and stigma there as well.
oh,
So
there is.
definitely. And I think, again, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story. I know it's been a long road for you, but the fact that you have used, your hurt and grief and turned it into something so beautiful, helping the community and raising that awareness is awesome. And I appreciate you sharing your story.
And thank you very, very much for asking me and inviting me
Yes,
to. It means a
definitely.
lot. It really does.
We just wanted to, kind of let you know that we're here. We appreciate, especially, like I said, being in recovery myself, to have someone else acting, as our voice as well is awesome. So big kudos to that. And thank you again for sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Anything else you want to say about the book or, slaying the dragon, things like that? Anything we didn't cover?
Just one little thing I'd like to add. The first time that it's so rewarding, the first time I shared my story was at the school that I was teaching at.
Okay.
We did it like assembly style.
Okay.
And, there's always room for questions afterwards, but
Right.
sometimes somebody doesn't want to ask the question in the crowd.
Right.
So after the room had cleared out, there was one 17-year-old junior that came up to me and
So
he
it
had
was high
tears in
school?
his eyes after everybody else left. Yes.
Right.
And said, can I give you a hug? And I said, well, yes. And he goes, I just want to tell you something. And he's crying as he's telling, and of course, I'm starting to cry too
Right.
with him. But he said, it's just me and my mom. She's all I have. But you know what? He goes, I was actually thinking about doing something tomorrow to overdose. And because I don't think that I'm good enough for my mom and she'd be better off without me. But he said, listening to your story, I know I can't do that to my mother. I'm not going to take any drugs. And I said, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go home and hug your mom and talk to her about how you're feeling. And you guys just sit down and just hug each other and listen to each other. And he said he promised he would. And you know what? That just, that told me that this is what I need to do.
Made it all worth it, especially to touch someone feeling that way. That your story could have an impact like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just him that it impacts, it's everyone in the community that you're reaching out to, sharing your story, and promoting all of this is great. Well, again,
thank you. And thank you for what you do.
We try. I feel sometimes we're fighting a silent battle, but now I feel, 10 years ago, there wasn't as many resources and things available for help as there is today. So that's a step in the right direction.
Yes, it is.
And, being in recovery myself, it is, like you said, rewarding to help other people and kind of get the message across that, we're not bad people, we're humans too, and life happens. And this is just something that, it wasn't my first choice to be, but.
Oh, yeah, right.
Well, Jessie, again, I appreciate you very much for sharing your story. I know, whether you know it or not, like I said, you're touching a lot of people out there and doing a lot of good for a great cause. So,
thank you.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.